Hey there, Evil Dead fans! Welcome to another episode of the Ash vs. Evil Dead After Show on AFTERBUZZ TV. Tonight, we are talking about Season 3, Episode 4, Unfinished Business. We're going to be breaking down the episode talking about Ash's adventure with his ghost dad, Brandy and Kelly fighting off evil Pablo, and the secrets of the Necronomicon. Stay tuned.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AFTERBUZZ TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
I'm all out of love. I'm so lost without. You know when I get attacked by a deadite, I want this song to be what's playing when that happens.
Oh, I'm gonna do exactly this. I'm gonna put up my arms, I'm gonna wave, because it's like, what is it, bears? If you can make the bear think that you're bigger than it is, it won't hurt you.
Does that apply to demons too? Is that a thing?
I'm not sure it applies to bears.
Maybe mountain lions. But what happens when they're demonic mountain lions? Does it still apply?
I feel like I end up in 7 or 8 pieces is what happens when they're a demonic mountain lion.
I feel like that's the case whether it's bears, mountain lions, demons, or demonic mountain lions.
I'm glad that we settled that I shouldn't go head to head with a bear and wave my arms to this song.
You know, don't go outside, Lex.
I'm gonna
stay away from the outdoors.
what my tomorrow is gonna be now, because it was all about bears until just a moment ago.
It was all about bears and demons and cellars and creepy stuff like that. Well,
all the time.
Just stay inside. You know, it's been raining. It's been raining here in Los Angeles. You're better off inside.
But what if there's a dead guy in my cellar?
Oh, now that presents its own set of problems. I guess you're good as long as you don't lock him up while he's still alive down there. You gotta double tap, make sure he's dead.
Right, or he'll eat all my spam.
All of your spam.
All
Lex.
of my spam. That was my civil defense rations.
Well, anyway, we should probably get going. Hey there, Evil Dead fans! Welcome back to the Ash vs. Evil Dead After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. I'm Megan Salinas, and with me, as always, is the Lex Michael.
That is me. I am the Lex Michael.
The one and only, probably.
That I know of.
Sadly, Lucretia was not able to join us tonight. She's not feeling well. Be sure to send her your well wishes at Lucretia Lion. Guys, we've got a lot of fun stuff to talk about tonight, and I cannot wait. So let's get right to it.
Yes.
Lex, initial thoughts and feelings about this episode.
I love this show.
I do too!
I love this show. All right, so we're moving into the middle portion of the season, right? This was episode 4 of 10, I believe.
I believe that is the case.
And it felt like the first 3 episodes were very much about putting all of the pieces where we wanted them to be. And now it feels like we're taking all of those pieces and we're now smashing them together in really interesting and seriously freaky, disturbing ways. No, I had a blast. This got me in a couple of different ways. I laughed a bunch, and there were a few emotional beats that they hit that I thought were really effective, and then immediately undercut in the way that this show is so proficient at. But yeah, I feel like this hit most of the boxes for me.
Yeah, I don't know how this franchise in equal parts presents both heart and cynicism in the way that it does, and delivers that in a very humorous way.
Yes.
It's one of those things where it's just like, this show has a soul, but oh my goodness, if it's not gonna poke fun and laugh at itself along the way.
Right. Well, it's much like Ash. It's got its moments, but it's also a drunken, perverted, sometimes racist,
with racist tendencies,
bizarre animal. But we love it so because it does have so very many moments.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting too. Again, the bits of world building, and I feel like this season is really taking the time to world build in a way that not necessarily the other 2 seasons haven't, but because every season has added to the lore. But I feel like this one, as you pointed out, is really taking the time to lay a lot of groundwork for other Necronomicon related stuff. So it's really cool to see them very much expanding the world of the Necronomicon.
Yeah, absolutely. And a number of things that we're seeing already this season that are making me go, oh, wait, what? On the one level, yeah, obviously, what? Oh, this is crazy. This is a show doing more crazy stuff. Look at the mouth coming out of that lady's leg. But then also at the same time, especially where what's going on with Pablo is concerned, the way they're right, like you said, they're laying groundwork, but they're not throwing a bunch of information at us and going, all right, here's what's up. Let's see what now the effect of this big thing is on the world. It's what is up. Let's track these little bits of information and see if we can't follow this string to the answer to these big questions. And I feel like maybe we'll get to it later in the conversation, but like next week maybe we'll start to peel back a few more of those layers. But yeah, a lot of stuff that it almost feels like there's like this is not a mystery show, so to speak.
No.
But it does feel like there are a bunch of big questions that it's not super pointedly setting up, but that it's presenting you with, and it's now really interesting to see them tell a story in this way where it's like, okay, like now, yeah, let me follow the breadcrumbs, get a little bit more, a little bit more.
Every other season so far has been about like going from point A to point B. Get this thing, fight demons, go here, fight demons, etc. Not that that's bad or anything like that, but yeah, this is the first time it feels like we're getting a bits of a mystery piece by piece by piece.
Yeah. It felt right in seasons past. It felt a little bit like even if we didn't know quite how we were getting there, we knew what our destination was pretty generally, at least by the near halfway point in the season. Whether it's okay, we know like Ball is a problem, we're gonna have to figure out how to deal with him at some point, or I was thinking about season 1, and then my brain immediately went back to the kid hitting the fan in the diner, which has nothing to do with their overall A to B journey. That's where my brain went. But point being, yeah, right now we've got, like you say, like we've got so much world building happening. We've got so much expansion of the story as it existed. And yeah, I don't know where it goes, and that's a bit of a new sensation, like not knowing where we're going at all, let alone how we're going to get there.
We've taken time to speculate, obviously, in the past, but one thing I'm kind of like noticing too is seeing how Ruby's character changes. You were talking about season 1, and just now my brain went to thinking back on how Ruby was presented to us in season 1, and that was a huge misdirect up until the final couple episodes of the season. So, and then again in season 2, she had this heel face turn where she ended up being on our side, and then ended up getting killed by her past self. We'll talk about it when we get to Ruby, but yeah, I kind of, in a weird way, I'm looking at Ruby in this episode and I'm seeing elements of who she was in season 1, which is an interesting backwards journey because this is past Ruby. She wouldn't have necessarily gotten there yet, so it's interesting to think about.
Whoa, my brain.
Just in terms of like performance. But yeah, let's go ahead and go back to the beginning, because Ash is dealing with the fallout of having murdered Deadite Dad.
I love that we did for just a minute up top. We got like the full Force Ghost looking Lee Majors. This was very nice. I didn't dare hope that this was coming, especially when the next week on last week showed him in what looked to be like a full, solid corporeal form. Very happy that we got like the little smoke ghost.
Ash, you need to go to the Dagobah system. No, it was a very. It was a great effect because it was so cheesy and like kind of stereotypical ghosty, and I like that they went that way because the show is so silly.
Yes.
And so of course and very like rarely does this show ever, or does this franchise ever do ghost. I think the last time there was like a ghostly specter in Evil Dead, it was in Evil Dead 2 when the professor kind of showed up randomly, as he's saying like, the secret was in the book. You guys have to figure out a way to close the portal.
Yes.
So it was cool to see those nods looking at Brock in this episode, but also then when we get to the cellar too, because there was kind of a brief nod to that.
Yes. Okay. Before we get there, though.
Yes. We've got some stuff to talk about before we get there.
I think my favorite bit of business, maybe with Lee Majors' entire episode, was in that very first scene where he sort of he becomes a little more solid in his appearance and his reaction. Because he was run over by a haunted Delta, then his body was reanimated, and then he comes home and meets his granddad, and then his son chainsaws his reanimated body to death, and now he's here as a specter. And his reaction to this whole thing is, I always wanted to be a ghost. Isn't this cool? I was like, that was amazing. And I love his attitude about it. He's just so positive about the entire thing.
This is exciting.
Yeah, and then of course my brain starts going, wait, so you always wanted to be a ghost? Like you thought your kid was full of shit and potentially a murderer because he was going on about demons, but you yourself quietly all of these years harbored a secret desire to be a specter.
I mean, is it really surprising that a member of the Williams family would want to walk through walls?
No, it's amazing.
No,
yeah, it's so gross.
I'm not at all surprised by that.
That's disturbing.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I don't want that at all.
But it is kind of funny just thinking of it as like an ooh.
Right. Like he just seems so, just for a moment, he seems so giddy.
Just like, oh, that's nifty.
And he seems to he adjusts to it pretty quick, right? Because later when they do get to the cellar, Ash creeps down the stairs and he's like, are you coming? Turns around and Brock is right behind him. He's like, ah! And Brock's just like, what? I do this now.
That, I mean, not gonna lie, it would be pretty cool to be able to to transport yourself instantaneously. Short distances, I would use that all the time.
Right, I feel like I would really love to be part of like a learning how to ghost montage. Like where I just try all my powers, I mess stuff up, I get stuck in a wall for an hour and I'm like, oh, where am I going? I'm a ghost, what do I do? There'd be a lot of that. There'd be a lot of me waving my arms at bears and going, I'm a ghost, what do I do?
Well, see, that's what happens. The start of the show is you waving your arms at bears, getting murdered by the bear, and then you're a ghost. And so the first time you're a ghost, you're waving your arms.
Oh, that's
and you're stuck in a wall, and it's hilarious.
And then it's like you'll play back the audio of me being killed by the bear, and we won't hear it. We'll just see your face, the grave look on your face, and you'll turn to my loved ones, and you'll be like, you must never listen to this.
No, don't do it.
He just keeps laughing and yelling about how pumped he is to be a ghost. It would only upset you.
If you only knew the things that I know. But yeah, to get back, in 2012,
yes.
we finally get this moment where that last line that Brock had before he died, before he was hit by that evil demon car. And I always thought that they were just kind of going to play this off as a joke, but it turns out, given we have a third season, that they have time to develop that through line.
Yes. And
what is the secret? The secret is that back in 2012, which, interesting year choice, by the way, back in 2012, a member of the Knights of Sumeria came to Brock's hardware store, insisted that he needed to find Ash, and ended up getting murdered for his trouble. And in his possession were missing pages from the Necronomicon. Aside from the fact that Brock murdered this man.
Straight up killed this man.
Like, really horribly. He left him down there to starve. Like,
right,
it would be one thing if the guy had died when Brock pushed him down the stairs.
Right, but no, he died very slowly.
No!
He tried to survive on Spam, and God knows how long he was down there before the Spam ran out.
Oh, man. Oh, that's so upsetting, Brock. That's bad. You did a bad thing, Brock. But that aside, I thought the year 2012 was a very interesting choice.
Yes, why?
Because the Evil Dead remake came out in 2013. So I'm wondering if in the timeline, if it's possible that the Evil Dead remake also exists within the same continuity as the show and the other movies.
Yeah, I mean, think about how happy that would make every fan of this entire franchise, right? Because that's been heavily speculated for a number of years that reboot might still fit into the continuity somewhere.
When they first announced the show, my first question was, is Mia going to be in it?
Right.
And I appreciate the fact that the show has focused on Ash and the developing relationships he has with Kelly and Pablo, but I would also really love, because it's taken the time to acknowledge every other incarnation of the franchise, including the one where the rights were really hard to get.
Right.
I would very much love it if they acknowledged the reboot as well, because that was less of a reboot and more of a sort of pseudo sequel.
Right.
So I would love it if this show were to take time to be like, yeah, that totally happened.
Even just a nod, right? Because early on, before we could really play with the Army of Darkness toys, they would talk around some of that stuff. And then once they could play with it, just in one line, it's like, oh, that's right, I went back in time once. And all of a sudden, that box is open. So even if this season all we got was just a throwaway line about another group of people who ended up at that cabin, and we get a photo somewhere, just a name drop real quick, and then we move on, even that would please me.
I guess the biggest problem with that is that because they went back in time before Ash and crew originally went to the cabin and destroyed it, technically that means it was never there for when... This is, again, where we get wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, but in theory, if that cabin was destroyed, Ash never went there, and then Mia and her friends never went there because there was no cabin to go to. But that being said, when you start messing with time, there are universes and stuff where stuff does exist. I mean, Ruby's still dead. Pablo is still alive. Cheryl's still dead. Like, it's one of those things where some things were clearly altered, but some things weren't.
Right.
So, even though Ash's life has gotten considerably better...
Time travel's complicated.
Yeah, but... Because you would think if by destroying the cabin, that would mean Cheryl would be alive.
In theory.
As would all his other friends and things like that, in theory.
But nah.
So it's not unreasonable to assume that because of time travel shenanigans, along with the fact that the book seems to also jump around in places in time, like, it's not too far-fetched to assume that the remake still happened.
Yeah, and I would every Evil Dead fan would love an acknowledgement, an open acknowledgement that these all these iterations share a continuity. And if it doesn't happen this season, I know right now apparently they have yet to get a 4th season renewal. It's a little bit up in the air as of this moment. If you're listening, subscribe to Starz and tell them it's because you want to watch Ash vs. Evil Dead. But even if we don't get it this year, if, fingers crossed, they get a 4th season, maybe we can use it to play with that more, because I don't know where the story of this season goes, but wouldn't it be great to see a season, a 5-hour-long season that really delves into the shared reality between the reboot and the rest of the franchise? I think would be awesome.
And I mean, the remake in and of itself also took a lot of time to make nods to the original, as Madness Maker in the chat points out that they've got the Delta in the remake, and there were a couple other nods as well. So I would assume that it's not out of the realm of possibility.
The other thing Madness Maker said that I quite enjoy was this reference to the line where Brock has no clue who Ruby is until Ash refers to her as Sasquatch, and he's like, "Oh yeah, Ruby, that's right." Good stuff. Okay, so wait, I want to go back because we were talking about this poor night that Brock left to die terribly in his cellar. What did you think about this reveal overall? Because I'm positive I'm pro this reveal, but I like the layers to it. But I wanted to get your take on it overall.
I like getting more about the Knights of Sumeria, and I also think the idea of there being pages ripped from the Necronomicon and just being out in the world, I love that idea as a dangerous force, because all this time, you know, Ash was keeping the Necronomicon safe.
Right.
And there are missing pages that are just out in the world, and I love the idea of that being pivotal to what's happening now.
Right. So for me... It's okay. It's 3 things.
This is a layered discussion because Brock did a terrible thing.
Dude, man.
This is a tragedy.
So,
the way this guy's life ended is a horror story.
It's a fascinating family, I tell you what. So for me, it's right. All right. So look, on the one level, the way Brock describes it, it really seems like the big secret that he wanted to impart to his son. Like, yes, obviously, specifically, it's about this night in the basement. But the way he describes it, he's saying, you know, I wanted you to know that I do believe you, and, you know, I support. It's his way of saying, like, I love you, son, and I believe in you without having to say it. That's very nice. Immediately under that layer is the fact that he horribly killed this dude. But then under that even is me going, wait, if in 2012 you bought into this, why last year or whenever were you such a jerk to Ash when he came home about every bit of it?
Well, it's one of those things where he didn't necessarily believe his son when this guy came knocking, but in Brock's mind, his son was very disturbed.
Right.
And so here comes this guy who's playing into the delusions that his son had spewed.
Right.
So, of course, he's like, forget you and your nonsense. How dare you? My son's a very troubled individual, and this nonsense ruined his life. So again, this is super layered.
Starved to death in the cellar.
Oh my God, that was not at all justified.
Ooh.
Oh.
That was like, and not for nothing, right? Like the dude, so for all Brock knew, I guess, like when he took the header off the stairs, that's when the guy was dead. Okay, fine. At no point did he go look?
No!
Like, he didn't think it was probably bad for business if somebody found a corpse in his cellar? Like, you'd want to move it eventually, I would think, if nothing else.
I mean, I feel like we had a lengthy discussion last week about how the Williams family just sort of tosses bodies in the woods, but, like... Brock didn't even do that. He just boarded it up.
No.
Can we also talk about the fact that Ash just in general does not have a ton of luck when it comes to cellars.
No.
Can I just say that, like, Evil Dead is enough to have me sworn off of cellars and basements for forever. Like, can we all just be agreed that Megan never has to go into a cellar or a basement ever?
Do you know what it is for me? It's not even like a basement. It's like the cellars with the doors, like the trap door that opens and closes. Because it's the aesthetic of it, right? Like, and Evil Dead has employed this over and over again. It's not somebody peeking through a doorway. It's somebody's head like popping up from the ground, like half opening the trap door with their head and staring at you. Because it's like, right, the mental image of being pulled into a room, to me, is not as scary as being pulled down into something. That's terrifying.
There's a different connotation, just ever so slightly.
Yes.
I've got one that's both of those things. One time I stayed at an Airbnb when my friends and I went on vacation, and in the closet of this cabin in the woods by this lake, in the closet was a trap door like that.
Nope.
So that's like
Nope.
dual, and it was kind of like a hidden closet too. Like it looked like it was built into the wall.
I don't like that.
And all my friends are like, "Hey, we should take a gander down there." And I was like, "You have fun with that.
They'll never find you.
I'm going to be over here. Call me when you die."
And that's why you're still here.
Yep.
And we haven't seen them since.
Yep, I miss them.
Yeah.
Good times.
We went back to check the house. It was gone.
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey stuff. So yeah, to get back, but what they do find in the cellar, in addition to this skeleton, is that one of the things this knight did before his untimely passing was try to figure out on the pages, kind of try to unravel this puzzle. And so all across the wall is literally writing on the wall from this ancient Sumerian text. And this is where we get sort of a peek into what appears to be the gateway to the nether realm.
Yeah.
Which is where Brandy's friend is currently residing. And again, this is what I meant when I said a throwback to Evil Dead 2, because we got a brief glimpse of the professor within the netherworld as well. And so it's really creepy to think that, like, everybody who's been possessed and killed as a Deadite, their souls are here.
Right.
You're not released. They're like trapped within this nether region.
Which is something I guess I'd never thought too much about before. It's like when somebody turns into a Deadite, I guess I felt safe to assume that whatever was in there before was just boop, gone. But apparently no, they actually like take them and much like the Williamses, they take the dead people and just like chuck them into a hole or something. But yeah, like what a...
They check them into the metaphysical equivalent of a hole.
But like she doesn't look like she's having a very good time in there.
No.
Whatever is happening.
No, and what we find out from the dialogue between Ruby and Kaya is that what this has essentially done is create a rift from where the Dark Ones are locked away. So the Dark Ones are in there, and the Knights of Sumeria have opened up this hole, and it's really just a matter of time, I guess, before the Dark Ones go, "Hey, is that an opening?"
Right.
Oh! Hey, Pete, why don't you go take a gander real quick? Let us know what you find.
I'm going. that's Pete. Pete's older.
The Dark One, Pete.
He's got a shovel. We don't know why. I'm going to go check it out.
But, so yeah, and we get this great slapsticky scene of Ash getting attacked by the cellar roots, which
The roots, yes. Okay.
always brings up really negative connotations whenever you get like roots and
Evil
vines.
Dead, yeah.
And no, thank you. I'm very glad that they just played this up for comedy.
See, I probably would have been more uncomfortable during the sequence if I had made that connection. Honestly, it's like, all right, now it's like, of course they're roots. In my head, I was just like, what are these wall tentacles? Like, what's good? This is great. This doesn't have to make sense.
They could have been otherworldly tentacles, but in my mind, they were cellar roots.
I was just like, is Ragman here? Like, what's going on? But no, like the root. Of course, it's the roots. That is the only thing that makes any sense at all. Yeah, that's yikes.
And again, you just don't know when it comes to Evil Dead stuff.
Oh no, do you think that the dude who got left in the cellar had to deal with those?
I mean, that might be what killed him. in a way that might have been slightly more merciful than just starving to death.
Yeah, like better or worse than starving. I guess it depends on how like quick and efficient the roots are at murder.
Well, and it also, I guess, depends on then, like, if he just starved to death, then technically his soul could move on to whatever nether plane he was destined to go to. But if he was murdered by cellar roots, he's probably in the netherworld.
I mean, well, sure, if he was definitely put in the nether, just chucked into the hole if the roots killed him. But if he's, I don't know how this works. Maybe it's maybe there's a clear answer to this. But right, if he dies in the room with the roots, he just starves to death. Once his soul like gets up and tries to leave the room, wouldn't the roots be like, no, come here, and they'd wrap around him and they'd just put him in the hole anyway?
Maybe.
I don't know the rules.
I don't know. Well, we've got some talk in the chat about the pages themselves. Blind Press in the chat makes mention that maybe they were the pages Jake threw in the cellar in Evil Dead 1, which, that's a deep cut.
Yeah.
That's a great throwback if that's the case. And Madness Maker also points out that the pages got sucked into the wall. So that's not good.
That's never good.
If the answer to how to stop all this or close the rift was in those pages, that's bad.
Yeah. Now I'm thinking, like, right, we keep trying to destroy this thing or put it places where nobody can find it. Is the solution to just send it to space? Or is the next thing that happens, like, planetary invasion of Deadites, like Deadites with spaceships and lasers and stuff?
Alien Deadites, I'm sure. I'm sure that's the next step.
I'm so... Evil Dead Covenant, I'm down.
That's season 4.
Just take my money. I will sell my limbs to finance this season if I have to. I'm not joking. I'm about to take him right now.
100% serious. So after Ash gets out of this, gets out of that situation, he and Brock have this very as heartfelt a goodbye as Ash and his father could have.
Yeah, and again, in true Evil Dead fashion, a really nice moment of connection that they immediately undercut.
But at the same time didn't.
Right, right.
Because it is just the way that they communicate to constantly rag on each other in that same, like, I love you without saying I love you way.
Right.
Saying, you're going to be a great dad, and having the last thing...
Did you really mean that? No.
Having the last thing he say, completely undermine that, but at the same time it's like that's his way of saying, because I'm not a great dad either, but you're gonna do your best.
Yeah, I mean, anything else would have felt uncharacteristic. It would have felt weirdly sappy for the two of them.
Yeah, and so this was, and even the look on Ash's face was just like, this was the perfect way to get closure with these two.
Which makes me think that maybe we've seen the last of Brock, which I think would be a shame, because I love what Lee Majors brings to this dynamic.
I do too. It's nice for Ash to have a dynamic with somebody who can tell him off in ways that Pablo and Kelly can't or won't.
Right.
So it's nice to have somebody there to sort of smack down his ego a little bit, but also to have kind of this fun banter with as well. Because they are family, and they have reached this understanding. Yeah,
and I think watching the two of them, watching Bruce Campbell and Lee Majors play off each other, it has not gotten old, and it keeps being fun, and they keep finding little new wrinkles, and that chemistry keeps developing. I'm like, I think it would be, even though I agree, like this felt like a good closure for the two of them. I think it would be a shame if we don't see him anymore. Like, just have him possess the car or something. Just have him around. Like, you can even seriously have him possess some inanimate object, or the lizard, the iguana.
There you go.
And just that way,
the iguana voiced by Lee Majors.
Right, seriously, you just have Lee Majors come in for like 2 hours for the whole
ADR,
season. Right,
yeah.
And all he has to do is just stand in a booth for 2 hours and go home, and we still get their interplay on the show. Season 4 with the space Deadites and the bears and Mia and the Lee Majors iguana. We're gonna cut off my limbs after this show, and we're going to sell them, and we're gonna make it happen. Starz, looking at you.
Yes, I am down for all of that. But yeah, let's do we have any final thoughts on Ash and his dad before we move on? Because right after that beautiful, bittersweet, but also very silly moment, Ash kind of is able to track down where Ruby is located.
Yes.
Because his dad knew the real Miss Previtt. And there's a botched rescue attempt. I was really hoping that Hitchhiker was already dead, because
this poor lady.
because if the preview is anything to go on, she's not gonna last long.
No.
But next episode.
But we got not only a scary cellar in this episode, also a scary attic.
Yeah, like on both fronts of the house. On both fronts of the house, you've got the top and the bottom. It's just a sandwich of terror.
Basically, it's not safe to be indoors either. We
No.
can't be indoors because there are deadites. We can't be outdoors because there are bears. Where am I supposed to go, Megan? Space with the Necronomicon, obviously.
No, there are deadites there. You can't go to space. I guess the only place you can go to is like the bar and just wait.
And like hope that whoever, like while I'm just under the bar crying and drinking, what are they, pink fucks, just drinking those, hope that somebody in the bar has their shit together and is ready to fight if
and
we
is
get
ready
attacked.
to wield a chainsaw or a pool cue. That's the best that you can hope for in this world. But the only thing I want to touch on for this moment is that we have another evil kid running around who's no longer a fetus. But I really loved this pantomime moment between the hitchhiker and Ash.
Yes.
Because Bruce Campbell is such a great physically great comedic actor. And so it's nice to see somebody working off of that in a way that is purely physical.
Yes. No, that was a really great bit of business. And then, of course, him getting stuck to the sink was a nice callback to the moment earlier in the episode where
his hand was short-circuiting.
And he says something vaguely racist about Pablo and the parts that he used to make the hand, I think.
We know that Ash was the one that paid for those parts and refused to pay top dollar for it, and Pablo did the best he could.
But so we get a nice callback to that moment because his hand gets stuck in the sink, which I thought was nice.
Yeah, that was great. But it means he has a malfunctioning hand and a demon child running around in that room in the dark.
I am both really into the design of that scary kid and also so not down with that scary kid. I do not want to party with that guy. I just don't.
It's just looking at how rapidly he's aging. I'm wondering if we're going to have another full-grown evil Ash, not long from now, and if that's going to be Bruce Campbell doing a dual role again as evil Ash again, or if they're going to get another actor to be young Ash, or if they're going with something a little different for this demon spawn.
Man, the teeth. I don't know about any of that, man. I just know that I don't want that thing to bite me.
Well, speaking of bites, let's talk about Brandy and Kelly fighting evil Pablo.
This was hardcore distressing.
Yes!
And okay, maybe the stress of it was alleviated ever so slightly by the fact that we've seen him die horribly once before.
We've
so
seen him chopped to pieces.
Right. So I'm like, that ruined my heart. So I feel like you can't fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, something. It was fine.
Shame on Ghost.
Right. It was such a, and right up top, right? Because last week we saw basically he vanished. We didn't know what happened to Pablo.
Yeah.
He just ran off.
Yeah, and right after Demon Dalton was like, hey, this is Pablo's fault. I told you it was Pablo's fault. I told you we couldn't trust him. And Kelly going, no, that's not what happened. And then he turned into a deadite. So, of course, we dismissed anything he had to say about not being able to trust Pablo. Well, that dismissal, came back to bite us at the beginning of this episode because he absolutely was evil, possessed, deadite Pablo.
Not for nothing, right? They keep coming up with really clever ways to do a splatter effect to get us to the title, and him coming right through the windshield. I was like, whoa!
That was jarring.
It's no, the heads don't go there.
No. Great song choice, by the way.
Yes, that was it, and it was such an upsetting sequence because he is the heart of the show, and I don't want to get too far ahead of the conversation. Obviously we'll have probably more specific predictions, but it looks like we established earlier in the season already that the writing is still on his body. There's still some residual effects of whatever bond with the book he had. And it's totally possible that what we're seeing is the early stages of almost like a battle for Pablo's soul.
Yeah.
And he's like Blade. He's like the Daywalker. He's got a foot in both worlds, and he's being pulled towards the darkness. And hopefully we'll see maybe in the next week or two, maybe he will be provided with some tools to fight back against that darkness.
Well, that's what's so upsetting. As you pointed out, we've seen this character die before and get brought back to life. More upsetting than seeing him killed is seeing him corrupted. And that's because he is so good and so pure. And that's one of the things that was really appealing about making him part Necronomicon, so to speak, is that he does have a foot in both worlds. And so it's nice to have somebody who can walk both lines and be that gray area in what very much gets painted as good is good, bad, good is good, evil is evil. There is no in between. It's nice having a character that can be a little bit evil, but use that to his advantage for good.
Yes, and I loved too that when Kelly and Brandy are holed up in Ash's trailer and he's trying to get in, Kelly makes it a point to say no. Like, the person who, of all of them, with the exception of maybe Ash, is the most down to kill the crap out of every single one of these things. It's like, no, we're not killing him. That's Pablo. We're going to help him.
Yeah, well, she kind of owes him one, because when she was possessed by Eligos, he didn't give up on her.
That's right. Man,
Yeah.
that was stressful.
Which it's kind of nice to see that come full circle too,
Yes.
because that was something that that was very distressing in season 1. So it's nice to see that when the reverse happened, because I always wondered if the situation had been reversed, would Kelly do everything she could to save Pablo, or would it kind of be like an Evil Dead 1 situation where Ash sort of has to kill his friends? And it's nice to see that when the situation is reversed, she is like, nah, I know there's a way to fix this, and we're
Right.
going to find it.
But then she got that bite, and for half a second, I forgot what show I was watching, and I was like, oh no, she's definitely dead now. And I was like, that's not that show. This is a different show. I was like, that looks
Not The Walking Dead.
Right. That looks pretty unpleasant though. And then of course it grows a Pablo mouth, which is looks very much. It reminded me very much of the effect in the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
When his mouth comes through the phone.
I'm your boyfriend now, yes.
Yeah.
I will say that when this bite happened, my immediate thought was like, oh shoot, Ash lost his hand.
That was the next thing I thought about.
Because it got possessed and corrupted, and now Kelly's leg, right on the knee too. I was like, we could chop off her leg and then give her a machine gun.
I was literally like Grindhouse,
machine gun
right?
leg?
Yeah, and she
That'd
just
be
at the end of the season, she just swinging it around, killing everything in sight. Yes, I am down with that. That or failing that, just a sweet bionic leg. Just give her a cyborg leg, like Ash's hand.
That would be cool.
Could come up with with some wacky scenarios where it malfunctions and everybody laughs.
And a good time is had by all. I think the only other thing to touch on in this episode is Ruby and, as we mentioned earlier, Kaya. Because Ruby opens up the Necronomicon, and we see that the whole reason why it looks like Kaya was locked away was because she took Ruby's side, which is an interesting. So, because I always thought she was just using the Necronomicon for her own purposes. It sounded like she was very much on Ruby's side way back in the day, and she's just kind of trying to walk that razor's edge to not be consumed by the dark ones who are locked away with her.
I really want to know all about the crazy Game of Thronesy drama happening amongst the old ones.
I would watch that TV program.
Hell yeah, it would be so prohibitively expensive. I feel like as a comic book, maybe we've got a better shot of seeing something like that.
I would totally love a flashback episode that took place entirely in the past and was just Ruby and Kaya and Dark One Game of Thrones stuff. That would be so cool.
I feel like almost even if you would just do it animated, right? Because I feel like again, to do that, to depict all of these demons on their home turf in their full glory would cost about what an Avengers movie costs for one episode. So I even just animate it, but if you could give us a solid animation and then just take us into that world and those dynamics.
This show has done really good animation in the past, even just last episode. But this whole thing was really upsetting because for a brief moment we got to see Dalton again.
Oh, this poor guy.
And he really, you really get the sense that he really did have a good heart, because when the evil is kept at bay and Ruby is torturing him for information, he chooses to just go out rather than betray his friends.
Right, and also, he knows too, she's right, eventually he will lose and evil's just going to take him over again anyway, and at that point she's probably going to be able to get whatever it is she wants or need, and he's like, not if I don't have a head, bam!
But this is what I'm talking about in terms of like seeing elements of season 1 Ruby come back, because her dynamic with the other Deadites is never positive because
Right.
she is that traitor. So I kind of like the idea of seeing eventually this Ruby turn into season 1 Ruby.
Yeah, I'm hoping we
Or
get
or
there.
I guess beginning of season 2 Ruby, where, you know, she goes through this journey and then kind of turns over a new leaf. I just really think that's an interesting journey.
Yeah, for sure. And I want to see those dots get connected, because we see, right, like you were saying, like we see overlap between the versions of Ruby, but they still feel like distinct personalities, and I want to see the line from one to the other.
All right. So, do we have any other thoughts on this episode before we go ahead and delve on into some predictions?
No, I think we're good.
All right, let's go ahead and talk some predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
So yeah, Kelly has an evil demon mouth on her leg. How do we resolve this?
I feel like come on, there's almost literally zero chance that she still has her natural leg by the end of the season.
I mean, it's entirely possible that with all of the Brujo stuff that is clearly happening in the next episode, it's entirely possible that Pablo turns back to normal and is able to dispel it.
That, or she's got a good Pablo mouth on her leg.
Oh my god, no.
But right, that's a good point, right? I'm like, as soon as I said that, I was immediately like, yeah, but like Pablo literally got his top part removed from his bottom part. We figured that out.
Yeah.
So we could probably figure out, yes, but I would like to see it. If we're gonna commit to like something's got to be done about this leg, because we've been watching for the past couple of years Kelly become hopefully a better, smarter, less perverted and racist version of Ash, and this is just another massive step in that direction. So I'd kind of like to see it, just to see like Kelly continues to be the strongest, most resilient character on the show. How does she deal with that?
Well, it's also nice to, as much as we love this show, we had a character die and then get brought back to life. And we're very grateful that he got brought back to life, but that does sort of undermine things in terms of like actions needing consequences.
Yes.
And so even though he died, we were able to retcon that. With Kelly, I feel like this is a good opportunity to remind everybody that actions do have consequences. And if that costs her leg, yeah, there are fixes for that in terms of like providing her with a bionic leg. But I could also see it just being fixed by Pablo magic.
Right.
And I would be okay either way, but I do lean more towards actions need consequences.
I'm with you, and to me, it is. It's more interesting to see that new element be foisted upon this character than essentially have everybody go scary and then just completely walk it back.
I feel like Ash walks out of that attic, but it's because that evil demon child escapes and is at bay. So,
for a minute, but like there's no way Demon Baby doesn't come back. Those teeth look expensive. You definitely use that kid again.
Absolutely. But whether or not it's going to go on like a little mini rampage as it like consumes people in the town.
But wasn't there like in the next week on that I saw, I don't always see them, but I saw it, and wasn't there like a quick shot? I don't know if you saw it. Did you see it?
Yes.
So wasn't there a quick shot of the like baby demon head on a big old body?
Yeah. I believe that's the hiker.
I'm not down. I do not want to party with that guy.
Oh man, that poor kid.
but okay, so the other thing that I guess we should touch on is you mentioned like Pablo and the magic. So we saw also in the next week on, he's getting some astral plane guidance from the Brujo again.
Again, this is assuming that this isn't a Deadite trick, because now that we've seen Kaya's face, for me, it's reinforced even more that the woman he's been seeing is in fact Kaya. That way, you know, when that mask finally comes off, it's like, yep, that's Kaya. So that's my thought on the matter. I really hope it's not a trick, but it could also be that she's trying to manipulate him, but El Brujo is trying to help him.
I just want this poor boy to get to run his food cart.
Yeah,
that's all I want.
His food truck.
This poor guy.
Pablo's fish and chips.
This poor guy.
That would be great. The only other thing I want to say is that I think with Kelly's constant assertions that, yeah, Ash is a jerk, but he's our jerk, and he's
right.
He's doing the best that he can for you under the circumstances. I feel like by the time the group meets up again, Brandy's going to be less salty towards Ash. that's gonna be an adjustment period, though.
Well, we also got an allusion. Ruby alluded to the anointed, the prophesied one being killed by his own offspring.
So maybe that's not the evil demon spawn.
No, and it could be right. Like, yes, they could refer to the crazy sharp-toothed hell baby, sure, but I feel like it would
be Brandy.
Right, you juke a lot more drama out of it being the girl that nobody wants to see die horribly versus the demon baby that like everybody wants to see die, so we all feel safer.
Yeah, that would be interesting. All right, do we have any final predictions before we wrap it up for the evening?
No, I predict I will like it, and it will make me feel things.
I predict that all of our characters are going to be eaten by bears. And it's going to be really upsetting.
Bears are dangerous. Bears are one of the greatest threats facing people who go and mess with bears in this country.
Someone really needs to put a stop to it. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Lex, where can people go if they want to find you?
I am all over social media at the Lex Michael. I also do a podcast with Tari J. Miller called Missing Out, where we share art, media, culture, and experiences with each other, and we talk about why some of these things resonate with us the way that they do. It's the retrospective that's introspective. You can find it on Twitter at Missing Outcast and wherever podcasts can be found, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Podbean. Come check it out. We love you. Big kisses. Mwah.
Again, Lucretia was not able to be here tonight, but you guys can follow her at Lucretia Lion on social media, and be sure to also check out her horror show that she does with her co-host Chauncey. It's fantastic. Be sure to tune in next week. We're going to have a special guest here on this after show, and that's going to be a lot of fun. If you haven't already done so, go to iTunes, rate, subscribe, leave a comment. We love hearing from you. Best way to let our producers know that you guys like the show that we're putting on. I'm Megan Salinas. You guys can tweet at me at the Menguin. That's TheMenguin. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you next time.
Goodbye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
I'm all out of love.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.